For centuries, a spiritual holocaust was waged against an entire continent. Vibrant, ancient traditions were systematically labeled as pagan, savage, and demonic. They were driven underground, yes, but they were never truly destroyed. So, what's the hidden story of how colonization and slavery tried so desperately to erase Africa's very soul? And how on earth did that soul manage to survive, even thrive? Before Christianity, before Islam, Africa had its own sacred power, its own profound connection to the cosmos. This, my friends, is the truth they never quite taught you in history class or Sunday school. Tonight, we're going to follow the faint, often deliberately obscured, trail of that forgetting. We'll journey from the chilling barracoons on the infamous slave coast to the seemingly innocent mission schools nestled in the highlands. And as we peel back these layers, we have to ask a crucial question. Who really benefits when an entire people is severed, sometimes brutally, from their ancestors, their heritage, their very spiritual bedrock? Stick around to the very end. I promise I'll share 3 powerful living practices you can support right now to help reclaim what was almost, but not quite, lost. Picture this. It's 1491, and the powerful Kingdom of Congo, far from being a backwater, embraces Christianity. But it's not some grand spiritual awakening. It's a strategic diplomatic move. A generation later, Portuguese priests are openly burning revered *Nkizi* statues. Those potent spiritual objects that embody the community's connection to the divine, and brazenly labeling local priests as nothing more than sorcerers. This isn't an isolated incident. This devastating scene plays out again and again across the vast African continent for over 500 brutal years. European colonizers didn't just arrive with Bibles and hymns. They arrived with 2 very effective tools for domination: a gun in one hand, a Bible in the other. The gun? Well, that secured the land, the resources, the physical territory. But the Bible, that was designed to secure the *mind*, to conquer the inner landscape. Missionaries, often with an unsettling sense of triumph, would brag in their reports about destroying fetishes, a rather quaint, dismissive word for the intricately carved shrines and sacred objects that had guided communities, provided solace, and anchored identity for a millennium or more. These weren't mere idols. They were vital conduits to understanding the universe, healing, justice, and community cohesion. The assault wasn't just theological, it was deeply pragmatic and economic. In German East Africa, colonizers imposed heavy taxes specifically on ancestral gatherings, making the very act of honoring one's lineage financially punitive. Think about that. A tax on your family's spiritual heritage. In British West Africa, they didn't just tax. They jailed herbalists, the traditional healers and keepers of medicinal knowledge, effectively criminalizing indigenous medical and spiritual practices. The message was chillingly clear, broadcast across every colony: your spirits, your traditions, your very way of connecting to the sacred were not just wrong. They were illegal, dangerous, and utterly unacceptable in this new, civilized order. This wasn't just about converting souls, it was about dismantling entire societal structures, about asterisk, asterisk, cultural imperialism, asterisk, asterisk, and asterisk, asterisk, epistemic violence, asterisk, asterisk, invalidating millennia of indigenous knowledge systems and replacing them with a foreign paradigm designed for control. The transatlantic slave trade, that horrific engine of human suffering, didn't just steal bodies and labor. It ruthlessly stole entire cosmologies, entire ways of understanding the universe. Imagine the docks of Ouida, a notorious hub on the slave coast. Here, priests were deliberately separated from priestesses, children from elders. These were not random acts. They were calculated strategies to break the spiritual and social cohesion of the enslaved. Chains didn't just bind wrists and ankles. Wait, they broke lineages, shattered spiritual families, and severed connections to ancestral wisdom. And that, unequivocally, was intentional. Ship logs from those terrible voyages often reveal captains mixing ethnic groups on purpose, a cruel tactic to prevent communication and, crucially, to prevent revolt. Mixed languages meant mixed prayers, making communal spiritual resistance incredibly difficult. Upon arrival in the Americas, the plantations doubled down on this spiritual warfare. Drums, those pulsating hearts of African spiritual expression, were outlawed under penalty of gruesome death. Why? Because the enslavers understood their power. Drums were not just instruments. They were communication devices, tools for trance, for communal memory, for invoking the spirits. Silence was a weapon. Yet, survival is often incredibly clever, remarkably resilient. In Cuba, the powerful Yoruba *Orishas* were not abandoned. They were ingeniously redressed, given new identities as Catholic saints. Shango, the god of thunder, became Saint Barbara. Yemaya, the mother of the oceans, became the Virgin Mary. This wasn't confusion. It was brilliant spiritual camouflage, a way to keep the sacred flames burning under the very noses of their oppressors. In Haiti, that same indomitable spirit powered the only truly successful slave revolt in history. The Haitian Revolution didn't begin with political manifestos. It began with a powerful Vaidu ceremony in Bois-Caiman in 1791, uniting enslaved people under the banner of their ancestral spirits. This proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the gods, the spirits, the ancestors pushed out the front door will always find a way to return through the window, sometimes with a vengeance. These acts of spiritual adaptation and resistance provided a profound sense of identity, purpose, and hope, becoming a powerful source of empowerment in the face of unimaginable brutality. The insidious thing about erasure is that it doesn't always wear a white face or carry a colonial flag. Often, it becomes internalized. Colonial schooling, a seemingly benign institution, was a powerful tool in this process. It created a new elite African boys who learned to recite, "Thou shalt not worship graven images," long before they could even name their own grandfathers, let alone understand their spiritual significance. These graduates, steeped in Western thought and often alienated from their own heritage, became clerks, teachers, and, with a bitter irony, some of the loudest critics of backward African customs. Take Liberia, for example. Settler colonies of freed American slaves, themselves products of a system that had demonized African spirituality, often banned indigenous Poro societies, labeling them secret devil bush schools. The Poro, ancient and complex initiation societies that governed social life, taught ethics, and preserved knowledge, were essential to the fabric of many West African communities. Yet, these new African elites, having absorbed the colonial narrative, actively worked to suppress them. In essence, the colonized, in this tragic instance, finished the job the empire had started. This self-hatred, this internalized rejection of one's own spiritual heritage, sadly still shows up today. Mention ancestral veneration in some African homes, and you might still hear a sharp thex witchcraft, a phrase lifted straight from 19th century missionary pamphlets, a direct echo of the colonial project. It's a testament to the deep psychological impact of centuries of spiritual suppression, where the very act of connecting to one's roots can be met with fear and condemnation, not because it's inherently wrong, but because generations have been taught to believe it is. Survival, especially spiritual survival under duress, often wore a brilliant mask. It wasn't about abandoning the old ways. It was about cleverly integrating them, making them palatable or even invisible to the oppressors. Brazilian candomblé, for instance, didn't just adopt Catholicism. It wove its sacred *oryxa sim beads directly into rosaries, hiding the powerful symbols of its deities within the seemingly innocuous trappings of the dominant religion. In New Orleans, hoodoo workers, inheritors of deep African spiritual knowledge, would sprinkle brick dust in ancient Congolese protection, trick while humming Amazing Grace, a hymn that, in their hands, took on new, coded meanings. Syncretism, this blending of traditions, is too often dismissed as mere confusion or a dilution of pure practice. But it's really a sophisticated form of encryption. Sacred data, vital knowledge, and powerful practices were smuggled under hostile noses. Preserved through ingenious adaptation. The same brilliant ingenuity created praise houses in the American South. Tiny, often clandestine wooden chapels where ring shouts a powerful communal form of worship involving movement, singing, and rhythmic clapping doubled as coded spiritual workouts. You clap, you stomp, you sway, and in that rhythmic movement, you remember a rhythm, a connection, a spiritual language older and more profound than the master's language, a rhythm that connected you directly to your ancestors and to freedom. These practices were not just about worship. They were about maintaining sanity, community, and a sense of self in a world designed to strip you of all three. Let's get a little nerdy for a second, because the impact of this erasure isn't just cultural. It's deeply psychological and even neurological. Neuroscience actually shows that the repeated demonization of a belief system, especially one central to a person's identity, triggers a profound cognitive dissonance. It creates a painful conflict between what one is told is right and what one feels is inherently true. Over time, to avoid this intense social and psychological pain, the brain often shelves or suppresses the shamed data, effectively burying those ancestral memories and spiritual instincts. Colonial regimes, perhaps without formal neuroscience degrees, understood this instinctively. They weren't just punishing. They were hacking the human psyche, exploiting our innate need for social acceptance and safety. By systematically punishing African spirituality through jailing, public floggings, or even death, simultaneously rewarding Christian conformity, they effectively hacked the dopamine pathway in the brain. The message was stark and clear. Convert, embrace the new religion, and you might get respect, perhaps even some meager social advancement. Persist in your traditional ways, and you'd get whipped, ostracized, or worse. Within just 2 or 3 generations, many families, under immense pressure, voluntarily abandoned the very rituals and beliefs that had once anchored their identity, their community, their understanding of the world. The erasure was no longer merely external, enforced by guns and Bibles. It became internalized, cached deep within neural pathways, a silent trauma passed down through generations. But the story doesn't end there. Fast forward to now, to the present moment, and you'll see an incredible, vibrant resurgence. African spirituality and #return to the ancestral aren't just trending. They're racking up millions of views on platforms like TikTok, signaling a powerful global awakening. Diaspora Africans, hungry for their roots, are journeying back to places like Osogbo in Nigeria for intensive IFA training, reconnecting with ancient divination systems. In Ghana, traditional priests and priestesses are hosting webinars, sharing their profound knowledge of herbal healing and ancestral wisdom with a global audience. Universities, particularly in Nigeria, are actively curating digital archives of no-kira divination tools and ancient texts, ensuring that this invaluable heritage is preserved and accessible for future generations. This isn't just an academic exercise. It's a living, breathing movement of reclamation and revitalization. And you, yes asterisk, you asterisk, can be a part of it. Here are 3 concrete ways you can join this powerful wave of reconnection. 1. Asterisk, asterisk, support the Shrine Fund. Asterisk, asterisk. Many ancestral shrines across Africa, particularly in places like Benin, are in desperate need of repair and preservation after centuries of neglect and deliberate destruction. Monthly microdonations, even small ones, can keep these vital spiritual centers from crumbling, ensuring their continued existence as beacons of ancestral memory. 2. Asterisk, asterisk, by translated sacred texts directly from indigenous presses. Asterisk, asterisk, don't just grab a mass-market translation from a big online retailer. Seek out publishers who are directly connected to the communities whose texts they're translating. When you buy directly, the royalties fund language preservation efforts, support the scholars and elders who hold this knowledge, and ensure that the benefits flow back to the source communities, not just some intermediary. 3. Asterisk, asterisk, map your lineage using free regional archives. Asterisk, asterisk, knowing your ethnic group. Your specific ancestral lines isn't just about curiosity, it's a powerful tool. It guides respectful engagement with specific traditions and cultures, helping you understand where you truly belong, rather than just cherry-picking practices in a tourist-like fashion. There are incredible, free resources out there waiting to help you uncover your story. If this story, this deep dive into what was almost lost and what is now being found, challenges what you learned in Sunday school or your history class, then please hit that like button. Seriously, it helps the algorithm show this vital information to the next person who's searching, next soul hungry for this truth. And I'd love for you to share your own family's spiritual pivot point, your moment of connection or disconnection, in the comments below. I read every single one, and often, your stories inspire my next videos. And yes, please subscribe, because next week, we're going to dive into why African masks still seem to terrify museum curators and what that tells us about their enduring power. Don't misunderstand. The erasure isn't some dusty historical footnote. It continues, just rebranded, reshaped for the modern age. Ghana's Parliament, shockingly, flirted with an anti-witchcraft bill that, if passed, could criminalize spirit medium work, effectively making ancient forms of spiritual practice illegal once again. Think about the implications of that in a country rich with traditional beliefs. Meanwhile, French oil companies, keen to exploit natural resources, are funding Pentecostal churches in the Congo that conveniently label environmental activism as demonic, thereby silencing the very protectors of sacred forests and indigenous lands. It's a cynical and effective strategy to clear the path for resource extraction. And while Hollywood endlessly appropriates voodoo dolls and symbols for cheap horror flicks, perpetuating harmful stereotypes, real voodoo temples in Haiti are still struggling to rebuild after the devastating 2010 earthquake. Largely ignored by international aid, the struggle, you see, didn't end with the raising of independence flags in the 1960s. It simply shapeshifted, adapting its tactics. Recognizing this pattern, understanding its ongoing manifestations, is more than half the battle. It's about seeing the threads of historical oppression woven into the fabric of contemporary challenges. Perhaps you've never set foot on the African continent. Maybe you feel a world away from these historical narratives. But here's the thing. If you carry African DNA, if your ancestors endured this spiritual severance, then its echoes live within you. It manifests in subtle ways in your posture, in the nuances of your language, even in the way you approach conflict or community. Reconnecting with this heritage isn't about donning exotic costumes or performing rituals you don't understand. It's about restoring a cosmic operating system that inherently values community over commodity, balance over endless accumulation. It's about remembering a holistic way of being in the world. And if you're not of African descent, understanding this profound erasure isn't just an academic exercise. It helps you spot the exact same playbook, the same insidious mechanisms of spiritual and cultural destruction elsewhere. You'll see it in indigenous Australia, in Native America, in countless communities around the globe where profit and power needed a people hollowed out of their hollies, severed from their sacred connections to be more easily exploited. This story isn't just about Africa. It's about a universal pattern of human domination and the remarkable, tenacious spirit of resistance. We're really trying to keep this channel ad-light, focusing on depth and authenticity. But let's be real. Quality research, travel, and production all cost money. Our incredible Patreon supporters unlock behind-the-scenes footage of my interviews with powerful priests in Haiti, wise elders in Benin, and brilliant librarians in Timbuktu. Their support makes this work possible. The link is right below. No pressure at all, just watching and sharing this video already helps immensely. But if you feel called to chip in, even a little, it allows us to film on location, to bring you these stories firsthand, rather than relying on stock images and second-hand accounts. It helps us bring this vital history to life. So, what is truly behind the erasure of African spirituality? It was, and in many ways still is, a 5-century alliance of capital, canon, and canon. An unholy trinity of economic greed, religious dogma, and military might. These forces understood something profoundly powerful. A people uprooted from their gods, from their ancestral connections, from their spiritual grounding, are infinitely easier to uproot from their gold, from their labor, and ultimately, from their very sense of self. Yet, every single attempt to delete these vibrant traditions, to wipe them from the face of the earth, only backed them up, not onto some digital cloud, but onto hidden servers, sacred caves, in the coded lyrics of songs, in the whispered proverbs of grandmothers, in the intricate patterns of textiles. They were waiting, patiently, for us to press restore, and guess what? Why Signal is stronger now than it has been in centuries. The ancestors, the spirits, the ancient wisdom, they are absolutely online. The profound, urgent question for each of us now is, will **you** click reconnect?